When it comes to eschatology, okay, eschatos or eschaton is the study of end times. Okay, now we have a theology, or we have our own eschatology, and I know people differ on things, certain things here or there, but there is a commonality within Christianity. All the sects, all the denominations, as far as Christianity, as far as what we believe, and there's a commonality. We believe there's signs that will come about the end times. We believe in the return of Christ, and we'll go more into the book of Revelation very shortly. But in Islam, they have minor signs of the end times, and major signs as far as the end times go. Minor signs for the end times, I'm just gonna instead of reading the passages, because there's a lot, but like moral decay. You'll have the rise of false prophets. You'll have division among Muslims, and we've seen that recently as far as a lot of what's going on in the news. Materialism and worldliness. I would say a lot of the Muslims here who are in the Western world. And then you'll have the spread of immorality. Okay, these are minor signs. I would say very similar to Christianity, like false prophets, sexual morality, all these things like that. These are signs as far as Christian. We have the same language when we speak, and I think Muslims will do the exact same thing. Now, Bonnie,
Ruben, do they look at that as within Islam or within in the?
Yeah, no. The world. But a part of what the world does is it influences Muslims. So they're looking at Muslims, say, in the Western world, as far as so the world, So the West, think of that as contemporary Babylon. That's like New York City is Babylon to them. Yeah, hence 9/11, right? So these are minor signs. Now, major signs. Major signs, before we get into that, I want to, because if we don't, we're not going to open up the Bible. And I want to open up the Bible because this is a meeting. But let's all go to Revelation chapter 12 and 13. We're just going to read it. We're not going to go too deep into it. Maybe later on tonight if we have time. But for the sake of clarity, we're just going to... Now, in Revelation chapter 12... what we have, so Revelation chapter 12 and 13, I'm just an overview, is a look at the diabolical Trinity. Okay, the diabolical Trinity. And what I mean by that is, as Christians, we believe that God is one, but he is one in essence, but three in being, three in person. So Father, Son, Spirit. We believe that he has the same power, but the only thing as far as distinction is authority. Chapter 12. Okay, chapter 12 is about this dragon. Okay, this dragon, and from verse 1 to 6, it's the woman versus the dragon, and we believe that's Israel or the church. Verse 1 to 6, and then there's three scenes in chapter 12. Scene 1 is the woman and the dragon from verse 1 to 6. Scene 2 is the war in heaven from verse 7 to 12. Scene 3 is the war on earth from verse 13 to 17. Okay, so this is the first scene. So in essence, who is the dragon? Who is the dragon? Verse 9. And the great dragon was thrown down, the ancient serpent, who is called what?
Satan.
The devil, Satan. Okay, the deceiver of the whole world. So we don't need to speculate who the dragon is of chapter 12. The dragon wanted to get to the woman but could not. Okay, so this is why there's different scenes. There's a war in heaven, there's a war on earth. Now, because he could not get to the woman, guess what happens? He sends two beasts out, the first beast and the second beast. Okay, so the first beast is in chapter 13, verse 1 to 10. Notice... I don't want to get too into it. Verse 3, one of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound. But its mortal wound was healed. And the whole world marveled as they followed the beast. And they worshiped the dragon For you had given authority to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like the beast and who can fight against it? So wounded, healed, praised. Okay? Wounded, healed, praised. So this is the first beast. And now we have a second beast from verse 11 to 18. The second beast here, and this beast here is almost like an assistant to the first beast. Okay? So he points people. What does it say? Verse 12. Verse 12, it exercises all the authority of the first beast in its presence. It makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast. Okay, so he makes people, points. It's almost like a photographer in the sense of you can't see the photographer, but you can see what the photographer is pointing towards. And I say that because that's the illustration of the Holy Spirit. Books have been written about the Holy Spirit because we forget the Holy Spirit, right? Francis Chan wrote the book Forgotten God, and there's been many books is because, remember, that's the essence of what the Holy Spirit does. The Holy Spirit points. How do you know someone is walking the faith? Well, it's Christ, right? So remember, Father, Son, Spirit. So the second beast almost assists the first one. Okay, so think of Hook and think of Shmi, right? Remember Hook? And then he's the main guy, but there's Shmi, he's like the little assistant, right? He points, he helps him out. Okay, and this is what we know. Okay, now, when it comes to Islamic eschatology, there are three major signs of the end, and they call it the hour. Okay? The first is this, and they're all people, they're all persons. Okay? In Islamic eschatology, the first sign as far as the end times is this arrival of this person called the Mahdi. Okay, or Al-Mahdi. Okay, so he is perceived as almost like a Messiah-like figure. Okay, so remember, Muslims believe that Jesus, Isa, is the Messiah, but this is almost another form of a Messiah, they believe, when it comes to the end. So the way we talk about the return of Christ is the way they talk about the Mahdi. Have you seen the Mahdi? Is he here? Right, that's the tone in Islamic circles. So there's a hope, they're longing for the Mahdi. Okay, and the Mahdi will pretty much, when he comes, he's an eschatological figure. When the Mahdi comes, he will establish the Islamic rule on the earth. Okay, and they call this the caliphate. Okay, so caliphate just means empire. So when we say the Roman Empire, empire just means kingdom, right? So very similar to the caliphate. He will establish the global Islamic caliphate. Now, this Mahdi, okay, will come and he'll ride on a white horse. Okay, do you guys remember there's another passage in the book of Revelation that talks about a figure coming on a white horse? Revelation chapter 6, verse 1. Okay, the four horsemen, but the first one was a white horse. Now, he'll also, when the Mahdi comes, he'll be loved by everyone. He'll be adored by everyone. Okay, also, when the Mahdi comes, he'll make a peace agreement with the West and with Jews. Okay? You know how long this figure, the Mahdi, when he comes and he'll make a peace agreement with the Jews and the Christians? They'll say Romans, but that's what we mean by the West. You know how long? 7 years. Okay, this is not our sources. This is their sources. Let me read to you the Sunnah that says, the Mahdi will be of my stock and will have a broad forehead, so a big forehead, and a prominent nose. Okay, he will fill the earth with equality and justice, as it just filled with oppression and tyranny, and he will rule for 7 years. Keep that in mind. So he'll make an agreement as far as peace with the Jews, 7 years. Now, after, remember this is the Mahdi, after, he'll come in with a huge army. And this huge army from the east will have black flags. And on the black flag, it'll say punishment. Okay, and the reason why they say this is because this is exactly what Muhammad did. Remember, when we talk about Islam, the first time I think we believe we talked about, remember when Muhammad was in Mecca, he was the minority. he didn't have a lot of people. So the language that came out of his mouth was peace, 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 peace. Oh, the Jews, the Christians, the people of the book, you're my people, I love you, right? That was the language. So when you see Muslims today, like, oh man, Islam is a religion of peace. Well, they're Meccan Christians. Well, guess what happened? When Muhammad got kicked out of Mecca because they didn't want him there, he went to Medina, and he was there for about 8 years, and this is where he grew an army. And when he came back down to back to Mecca, obviously there was raids and there was wars in between from Medina to Mecca. Remember, it wasn't even called Medina; it was called Yathrib, and he renamed it Medina, right, which means city of the prophet. So when he's on his way down to the south to Mecca, guess what? You'll hear Muslims say, "Oh, and then there was a peaceful conversion." No. It was peaceful because he had more soldiers. Bottom line, there would have been a huge war if right. So when my point is, when you hear Muslims say, "Oh, it's a religion of peace," they're quoting the Meccan scriptures. So when Muslims are peaceful, when you encounter Muslims, say in Canada or in America, they're peaceful because whose land are they on? Whose land are we on? Are we in Syria? Are we in Pakistan? Are we in India? No, we're in Canada. We're in the United States. There is no Sharia law. When they're the majority, now we want Sharia law. Now we want to change your laws. Now we want to have a new government. And then all of a sudden, what? More violence comes about. So we're Medina Christians, or Medina Muslims now. Different, big difference. Okay, now, so that being said, when Muhammad came from Medina to Mecca, he had flags and it said punishment. Very similar as far as the Mahdi. There will be flags, black flags, that say punishment. Eventually, they're going to conquer the Jews. I want to read to you from Sahih Muslim. This is their sources, and this is what's going to happen eventually. Okay, the last hour would not come unless the Muslims will fight against the Jews, and Muslims would kill them until the Jews would hide themselves behind a stone or a tree, and a stone or a tree would say, "Muslim or servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me." So this is a tree speaking, or a stone speaking. This is like Lord of the Rings, right? Saying, he's right here, come and kill him. Okay, so this is what's going to happen at the end. So remember, there's a 7 years, we're good, we're fine, and all of a sudden, things are going to change. There's going to be punishment with Jews in particular. Okay, so I've always wondered why, think of it theologically, I've always wondered why Muslims and Jews are always in conflict. Because if you think of it theologically, there's not a lot of difference as far as the monotheism goes. Like if you think of Judaism, they're Unitarian as far as their understanding of God, Yahweh. Muslims, Allah, they're Unitarian. So they like to point at Christians and be like, you guys believe in some three-headed God or whatever, right? But we don't. But my point is, at least when it comes to Judaism and Islam, there's a commonality as far as Unitarianism. But why is there so much war? Why do Muslims always go after the Jews? It's historically, right? And I hate to say it, but we're going to get into it in a bit. But they're pretty much trying to reenact what Muhammad did. Okay, remember we talked about this the first talk. The Banu Quraysh tribe, where 800 to 900 Jews were slaughtered. But remember, there's a reenactment of that. Okay, now I must say this is the Mahdi. Okay, the Mahdi. This is their messianic figure that's gonna bring an Islamic world. And what's gonna happen is he's gonna take away all the Christians, the Jews, and pretty much set up the caliphate. And this is before the end. And then there's going to be judgment for all of us in the afterlife. Okay. Now I'm going to continue to go into the Mahdi, but I must make a distinction between Sunni and Shiite because there's a different understanding, very slight different understanding between the Sunni and the Shiite. But remember, in Islam, the major sects, as far as Islam goes, is the Sunni. That compromises 85, maybe 90% of Islam in the world. And there's 10%, and that's the Shiite. Okay? And it's primarily political as far as why there's a difference. So remember, the first Remember after Muhammad died, the question was about successor. Who's gonna succeed the prophet? So it was known as the Rashidun Caliphate, which was the first caliphate, and it stemmed from Muhammad to his 4 successors. So you have Abu Bakr, after him, you have Umar, you have Uthman, and then you have Ali. Okay, now this is the Rashidun Caliphate, but remember the 4th one. This is the big one, the 4th one. Ali Abi Tabin, more specifically, is the cousin and son-in-law of Muhammad. So he's by blood related. He married Muhammad's daughter Fatima. Okay, so this is big, and the reason why this is big is because Shiite Muslims believe that the successor should be related to the prophet. Sunnis don't. They believe it is by qualification. Okay, so because it's by the way, I think it's like politically speaking, I think it's better if it's like trust fund kids, right? It's just because you're blood related doesn't mean something good's gonna happen, right? If you know Marcus Aurelius and Commodus, as far as the Roman Empire, it's like a beautiful 19-year rule of Marcus Aurelius, and a disastrous. It's arguably that's like the downfall of Rome was his son. And what? Just because you're blood related? So, anyways, I don't want to go too much into whole monarchism discussion, but essentially this is where the divide is. Okay, so you have the bloodline of Ali, or Muhammad, or successors. So Shiite, they believe in it's Ali. And then after Ali, he had a son, Hussein. And Hussein, after the Rashidun Caliphate, it was the Umayyad Caliphate that started. And what happened was that Hussein came up, I was going to say with his horses, came up north to confront the Caliphate and say, I'm the grandson of the Prophet. And what happened was, according to Shiites, they cut his head off. And some even say they chopped his body into pieces. This is the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad. And this is the Battle of Kabbalah, and this is the celebrations that Shiites do called Ashura. So you'll see Muslims, and they wear all black, and it's they'll have like weapons, knives, and they'll cut themselves and they'll whip themselves, and they'll just be all blood and screaming and whatnot. And what they're doing is they're mourning Hussein, who is the grandson of Muhammad. Okay, but the essence of it, it's kind of a reminder to the injustice of the Shiites. So the Shiites, they believe they're like oppressed. They're right. If you know what's going on in Yemen, so anyways, in reference to the Sunnis. But this is the divide. Okay, so essentially, should it be bloodline or should it be a successor by qualification? Sunnis, that's again 90%, 85% of Islam believe it's qualification. Okay, so keep that in mind. So Sunnis, when it comes to this guy right here, when it comes to the Mahdi, they believe that it is a biological descendant. Okay, so it has to be from Fatima. So, the Mahdi is pretty much from Fatima. Now, this is big. Shiites believe in something called the 12th Imam. Has anyone heard that before? The 12th Imam? You'll hear about it if you watch the news and you filter Islam through what's going on in Iran. And the reason why is because they talk about the 12th Imam. Well, what they believe is because, remember, there's that bloodline that happened. So they skip over Uthman, Abu Bakr, Omar. So they just go straight to Ali. And after Ali, there was 11 successions as far as bloodline that they could trace. Okay, and the last guy, the 12th Imam, was Muhammad al-Mahdi. Okay, who was 9th century, so he existed more than 1,000 years ago. Now, what happened to him in 941 was that he disappeared. He's bloodline related to Muhammad. He disappeared. So what Shiites will say is now, like, to me, it's like he died. Like he's died and no one knew where he is, and no one reported it, right? To them, it's this, he's gone, and they believe that he's still among us, and they call it gaiba, and what that means is the imam is here, but he's not here. You could see him, but you can't see him, so it's very spiritual. And what they believe is that the 12th imam, or the Mahdi, because they believe the Mahdi is the 12th imam, he's here, but he'll make himself known. Okay, this is what Shiites believe. Okay, the 12th imam. So it's big, because Sunnis won't say that. Okay.
Yeah, back when you were first starting, you said two different things. You said that the Mahdi will make a peace treaty with the West, and then you said with the Jews.
It's a passage. I chose not to. There was a big name I couldn't pronounce, so I did. He'll make a peace treaty, and then he'll break it. Is what I'm saying.
Okay, because the Antichrist makes it with the Jews, but I didn't know, because you said both of them. You said first, you said he makes it with the West. So I was wondering if he makes it with the world and their eschatology.
So, okay, let me be more literal. It doesn't say the West. I imply it. It says the Romans. Okay. So the quote says he'll make a peace treaty with the Romans. So Muslims will say that's in relationship to Christians, anyone white or Western. Yeah. So it's pretty modern translation on top of it. Yeah. Yeah. So the actual passage in the Hadith says, and he'll make a peace treaty with the Romans and the Jews. Yeah, but it's implied a Roman was a Christian at that time, because Rome you got Christianized 380. Okay, so.
And then I had another question real quick. I'm confused on which one it is. The Sunni believe that it's by merit or by birth.
No,
and the Shiite, which
Sunni is qualification. So they believe that the successor, was Abu Bakr. Okay, so Abu Bakr, Omar, Uthman, and then Ali. Shiites will say, no, it should have been Ali. And I skipped over a lot of stuff because I don't want to be too detailed, and I know if I'm too detailed, time goes by. So that's a disagreement. So it's bloodline. The Shiites are all for bloodline. Okay, but the problem with the bloodline is under the 12th Imam in 941, he was gone. He just disappeared. So they call it the occultation, right? So what they mean.
941. You said 1941. I was so confused.
No, 941. No, 941. So ninth. So he was 9th, 10th century. So that's what I'm saying. So that Imam Muhammad al-Mahdi Shiites believe that's the future Mahdi. So notice Muhammad al-Mahdi. Yeah. So it's but Sunnis and Shiites, they believe it's the same Mahdi. Okay. Now you're like, what's the point of all this, right? Most Muslims, there was a Pew research done in 2012, and they believe that they will see the Mahdi within their lifetime. They believe that. Most Muslims. This is in 2012, so imagine 2024. It's very similar to when Christians speak. Do you believe you'll see Jesus return? Like, some people believe it, some people don't. But some people do. It's kind of very similar to the discussion. Now, this is big because it shapes the way you view the Middle East today. Okay, so what happens? So remember this, Mahdi. This guy Mahdi will come in and war and all that stuff. Now, it was the year 1979 where there was a siege of the Grand Mosque, where a group had declared that they had seen the Mahdi, led by a man by the name of Jayhuman al-Atib, who is this guy right here. That guy right there was an Islamic teacher, and he believed that the Mahdi was among them and believed that he knew who he was, Muhammad al-Khatin. Okay, and he was the Mahdi. And what happened was they plotted. Okay, remember the Kaaba is that black cube? What happened was that in the Kaaba is that there's no guns permitted. Okay, but what happened was that they have a ritual where if someone dies, you bring their body to the Grand Mosque and there's a blessing that happens. But what he did was that he got guns and he made them into a body and put blankets over it, etc., and brought guns in through there. And what happened was that he had hundreds of supporters that followed them, believed that the Mahdi was among them, and pretty much got those guns, locked up the Grand Mosque, and we had a siege for 2 weeks. Okay, does anyone remember this? No? Okay, well, I wasn't born. I was gonna say I remember it, but this is 1979. Okay, so big, huge. This literally changed the Middle East. This one event right here, and this year particularly. What happened? This is why the Middle East looks like the Middle East today. So, what happened was that it was a weird situation in the sense that the Saudi Arabian government, remember, it was illegal for any violence to happen in the Grand Mosque. So you couldn't call the police to shoot anyone. You couldn't, or a sniper. You couldn't because it's illegal. Okay. So what happened was that the Saudi they called on the French, and they had a special squad that came in, so they can fight for them. But the problem was that if you know Saudi Arabia, it's illegal to be a non-Muslim in Mecca or Medina. I don't know if you knew that. Did anyone know that? So this is why you're not going to see any Christian influencers or influencers in general walk to Mecca or Medina or the Grand Kaaba or the mosque and be like, hey guys, I'm here in Mecca. It's not as bad as what these Christians think they are. You know, they do that. I saw a video of like some tourists going to like North Korea, and obviously there's a tourist zone, and just recording, be like, it's not as bad as America thinks. It's like, all right, anyways, but you're not going to find any of those videos in Mecca. The reason why, because you cannot, if you didn't know that, you cannot be a non-Muslim in Mecca or Medina. So all of us, we can never go. And the French, what is speculated is they had to convert, just say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah Allah, and then find you're a Muslim. All right, now, and then for 2 weeks there was a siege war that happened. Okay, but remember, there were thousands of people in the Kaaba that didn't speak Arabic, so they were confused. Because remember we talked about the common misconception of Islam from a Westerner is you think they're Arabic, you think they're Arab speaking. No, 65-70% of them are East Asian that don't know any Arabic at all, right? So my point is they were confused. So what happened was that the French came in, and there's photos of, and they had to gas the whole basement. Everyone had to run out, and they just sniped them down. And then the Mahdi, the Mahdi who was there, he believed he was a Mahdi. He thought, if I'm the Mahdi, I'm not supposed to die. I can't die. So you know what he did? He walked out in the public, killed him. Right? So his supporters were like, wait, the Mahdi's not supposed to die, and he's dead. He's bleeding on the floor, right? And that's where as far as like they knew this was a sham. And what happened was that they beheaded, the Saudi government beheaded 42 of the supporters. So anyways, so this was in 1979. Okay, but remember, why did they do this? Because they thought the Mahdi was there. They wanted this to happen. Okay, they wanted this to happen. Now, remember, this significantly changed Saudi Arabia. Before Saudi Arabia, very Western. Okay, people wore bell bottoms, people wore pants, women didn't have hijabs, they could drive, etc. Okay, all nice. Look at that, nice and happy. Okay. And what happened is that after the siege of Mecca, was that it changed. The Saudi government all of a sudden went from liberal or moderate to very conservative. So all of a sudden women had to wear hijabs, they couldn't drive, etc. And so here, when it comes to Islam, and I'm giving you a commentary as far as a Westerner looking at the Middle East and Islam, because a lot of people are confused. But remember, it's a cycle. It's a cycle. It does this, okay? And what I'm saying it does this is that it's going to go from moderate to liberal to conservative to moderate to liberal to conservative, and on and on and on and on. It's going to do that, and it's been proven since the Industrial Revolution. 1760. Okay, as far as what's going on in the Middle East. And what I mean by moderate, liberal, conservative is like, say, Saudi Arabia. You can say this is maybe liberal, maybe? No hijab, haram, right? So an event like this happens, people come together and it's like, hey, this is not according to the hadith, to the Quran, to the Sunnah. So an event happens where there's terror, and all of a sudden it'll go from liberal to what? Very conservative. Men can't be together. You see beheadings. You see right, and all of a sudden, people get sick of the conservative because it's. We all know it's inhumane to live like that. I'm just calling it what it is, and all of a sudden you'll go back to moderate, right? And then from moderate you go back to liberal, and then from liberal it's like this is too much, and back some explosion happens back to conservative. That's the cycle. So for Saudi Arabia, before 1979, and all of a sudden, a very wealthy man, and his business was known as the Bin Laden Group, Mohammed bin Laden, and he had one of the most successful construction companies in the Middle East. Okay, and he had 11 wives. Okay, 54 children. Okay, billionaire, okay, and one of his children, the 17th one, was actually in this photo. Mohammed bin Laden. Okay, now where is he? This guy right here. Okay, I want you to see the guy in the yellow right there. See him? Hold on, I gotta see a photo where you guys could see it. The guy in the yellow. You see that right there? Do you see him smiling? Yeah. Everyone confirm it, please. Yeah, I see him. Right?
Yeah.
The guy in the yellow, okay. So that guy in the yellow was the 17th son, and obviously had a lot of money because his dad's a billionaire, and had specific religious convictions. And the Soviet Union came into Afghanistan, and all of a sudden he says, I don't like what these Westerners are doing. So he decided, this son decided to go to Afghanistan and fight alongside his Muslim brothers, the Sunnis. Okay, time goes by, and he supports this group because he has a lot of money because of his dad. And guess who this man in the yellow became? He became this man. Okay, Osama bin Laden. So you go from Western millionaire / Osama bin Laden to this guy right here. All ideological. In the name of something called Wahhabism, okay? And this is back to the cycle I said. Wahhabism is where we become literal. We want the roots of Islam. What did Muhammad do? What did Abu Bakr do? Aisha, yeah, she was 6. Maybe we can marry kids too. We go back to as earlier as possible to Islam. So when you have these people who read the Quran and they see, wait, it's a Muslim nation. Why are they doing this? We want to go back to what the Muhammad said. It's called Wahhabism. Okay, and it's also called Salafism. Salaf to go back as early as possible to Muhammad. So this is what essentially what led to Al Qaeda. Okay, so remember, when you see Osama bin Laden, you can see a person's health as far as what's inside them through their eyes. Someone's angry, and some people are good actors, I get it. But when I look at bin Laden, if you can look at all the videos, he didn't seem like a rageful man. He just seemed very calm, and like he was just, you know what I mean? He was just like, but because he was ideologically focused. It's pure ideology. Was he angry? I'm pretty sure, right? When you have U.S. troops, fighting in the Gulf War instead of Al Qaeda, because that's what he wanted. You have these Americans on Saudi Arabia's soil where our prophet was. How dare you do that? So he got upset with Saudis too, right? So again, my point is, you look at 9/11, you look at the works of Al Qaeda. which pretty much essentially means the foundation, Al-Qaeda, it's heavily theological. It's heavily eschatological. Okay? Let's keep going with this modern day affairs. Does this influence American? Yeah, of course it does, right? But it stemmed from what? We went from eschatology, or it's the doctrine of the Mahdi, to Wahhabism, to terrorism, in that cycle. Okay, he had a guy, Bin Laden, that also believed in the exact same ideology, and his name was Zarqawi. Because remember, there was Al Qaeda, and there's Afghanistan, and all of a sudden they started Al Qaeda in where? Iraq. So they were known as AKI, Al Qaeda in Iraq, and it was named. It was a friend of Bin Laden by the name of Zarqawi. Okay. Now they butted heads. Okay, you're not going to hear this on the news. Okay, you're going to hear like they killed someone. He beheaded an American from Pennsylvania. Zarqawi is 2004. It was pretty. But my point is, you hear these things, but you just hear these things like he cut someone's head off. American foreign policy, and that's it. Well, they butted heads, and they butted heads in something called takfirism. Okay, now takfirism is what Zarqawi believed in. Remember, and he eventually took Al Qaeda of Iraq, and it became the Islamic State of Iraq. Okay, keep that in mind. And takfirism is the belief that Shiites, or even some Sunnis who are secular, are non-Muslim. So we're treating our own people, Muslims, Shiites, or secular westernized Sunnis, as the infidels. So guess what? We can cut their heads off too. He believed that. So they butted heads. Bin Laden just believed in we kill the West, right? In the name of Wahhabism. He believed, Zarqawi believed that no, we have to cleanse our own people because they're impure. So it's kind of like if you're more, say, a passionate Christian, you go into one of these like very progressive liberal churches. See that attitude that you have? Like, oh, these guys don't know what they're talking. Very similar to takfirism. So do you remember there was an ISIS? I'm pretty much saying it. He's the founder of ISIS. This guy right here. Okay, but remember that Jordanian pilot that got burned alive? I don't know if you guys ever saw. He's Muslim. Why are you killing a Muslim? Takfir. So whenever you hear them like kill a fellow Muslim, they'll scream Allah Akbar, but they'll say Takfir, yeah. So it's in reference to that. They want to cleanse Islam. Okay. So he dies in a drone strike 2006, and eventually he names it the Islamic State of Iraq. He's dead. You have the new founder, this guy right here. Okay. Does anyone recognize him? No? Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, okay? And he became the next leader after Zarqawi. So what happened after Zarqawi was that it was the Islamic State of Iraq, and he took the Islamic State of Iraq and he also brought it to Syria. So it became the Islamic State of Iraq and of Syria, known as ISIS. Okay? Why is he talking about these terrorists and these guys with beards and right? Well, he is an imam, and he used to speak at a mosque in Iraq, and guess what he said? He proclaimed that he is the new caliphate. Notice, they have black flags, right? They're trying to cleanse, they're trying to usher in, right? They're trying to bring in this end time prophecy, right? So he claimed that he was the caliphate, okay? Now, if you're a Muslim here in the United States, you'd probably view him as crazy or like David Koresh, right? But my point is, this was the claim that he was making. Okay, so my point is, obviously ISIS and what they've caused, the Islamic. So this is the origin of ISIS. Okay, he got killed in a drone strike in 2019 under President Trump, but essentially, you have Islam that's very moderate or liberal. An event happens. wakes people up, influences people, and people say, that's what I believe about the Quran or the Hadiths. Wahhabism comes in. After Wahhabism comes in, we want to be as earliest as possible. Well, what did Muhammad and his army do to Jews? Killed them, right? This is why you see Islamic State, Al-Qaeda doing these things. Okay, so you have Al-Qaeda, you have ISIS, heavily eschatologically focused. Okay, that year, 1979. Okay, also changed the Middle East. Remember I said it changed the Middle East. Okay, you had Iran. The monarch is called the Shah, and the Shah is essentially king, right? If you see photos of Iran, the exact same thing as far as Saudi Arabia. Bell bottoms, women without hijab, laughing in a car drive. Like women are driving, like, yeah, I'm driving, right? And then there was this man who was a scholar. He was a religious leader, got exiled from Iran. And it's almost like it was Twitter before Twitter came about. Would publish, or not, would write journals, would write articles against the Shah of Iran, and he had broadcasts on a radio, and his influence grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And he was criticizing the Shah as far as it being too Western. It's not pagan, it's not Islam. You guys are American, you guys are Christian. What is this, right? The Shah got ousted because of this influence, and lo and behold, you have the coming of, do you remember this guy? Ayatollah Khomeini. Okay, and it was known as the Ayatollah in Iran. And this is where the popularization of the 12th Imam comes about. Okay, so Ayatollah Khomeini pretty much started the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the essence of his political ideology was the guardianship of the jurist. And what they would do is that they were qualified jurists. They looked at the religious, the political matters, but it was during the occultation of the 12th Imam. Because remember, Iran he's Shiite, so they believe in the 12th Imam. So he believes that he does not believe that he's a 12th Imam. Let's make that clear. But they're functioning, they're facilitating Iran because they believe the 12th Imam is amongst us. So we have to usher him in. Right? So let's keep going with this ideology. This is very eschatological. Remember, Ayatollah, and then what happened? You see women now wear hijabs, you see, right? The whole conservative thing came about, and now Iran is what Iran is today. Okay? So we have Saudi Arabia, we have all these nations going from, remember, liberal, moderate, liberal, conservative, and it's going to go moderate, liberal, conservative again. Okay, so as we speak right now, there was police that killed a woman because she wasn't wearing her hijab right. I don't know if you guys knew what was going on in Iran, and women broke out. They got upset but now going back to moderate, right? This is what's happening in Iran. They're so sick they don't like Islam, right? Because of conservative Wahhabism. Okay, terrorism, eschatology. This was 1979. 3 years later, he funded this group in Lebanon as this Shiite group. Remember, Shiite, okay? And they're today known as Hezbollah, okay? The very essence, Hezbollah by nature is Shiite, okay? And they were funded by this guy. I'm not going to say he started it, but he definitely supported Hezbollah. They're still being supported today, and one of the generals reported that he saw the 12th Imam. Okay, because remember, they're by nature Shiite, so this is what they hope for. Okay, remember it. When I say occultation, it's one of those things where you can see it, but you can't see it. So he can say, I saw it, and then someone walks into the room and they, hey, where'd he go? It's like, oh, he's gone. It's one of those it's very spiritual when people talk like that. Okay, so Hezbollah, a party of God, that's what it's called. To them, they're doing what's right. Remember, there's when us in the West, we look at Muslims, we're like, oh, these evil, Bin Laden, all these things. Remember, if you look at Bin Laden, we know he's a terrorist, right? We know that. But you talk to one of these young Arabs in one of these Muslim countries, you know what they compare Osama bin Laden to? Bruce Wayne. Literally, they view him as Bruce Wayne, as like Batman, right? Son of a billionaire, gave his life to fight evil, and literally bin Laden was a son of a billionaire, had a lot of money, but he, instead of living a lavish life, he could have moved to America, he could have lived in Florida or on the Keys or whatever, but he decided to fight against evil. And 9/11 was that affirmation. And on top of that, they couldn't find him for a good 10 years. That's Bruce Wayne to them. You see that? All interpretation as far as the way you see things. Okay, same thing with Hezbollah. You see Hezbollah, it's a group that's fighting on God's sake. Because remember, the Israelites, those are the people of Satan. Okay, so purely ideological. Okay, so this is just one. The doctrine of the Mahdi. Okay, the doctrine of the Mahdi. They believe this figure, the Mahdi, will come on a horse, and he'll bring in the nation, the Caliphate of Islam. Okay, so remember that this doctrine right here will bring about Wahhabism, and that's we want to be more literal. We want to be as close to Muhammad as possible, which brings in terrorism, which brings in what in relationship to America? Foreign policy. Okay, in that order. So when we view the news, we just view it as some terror group brought up. I don't know why, but they just did it. There are theological matters as far as what they're doing, right? So it'll be reported. Oh, they're using religion for power. They'll just it's a fallacy called appeal to motive. I don't know what's in someone's heart, but I say it. They're just doing it because remember they're motivated by religion. They believe they're the good guys. Okay, all through the doctrine of the Mahdi. Okay. So that's the Mahdi. That's number one. Number two, the arrival of the Dajjal. The Dajjal is Jewish, comes in as a prophet, later on declares that he is divine. He does miracles, okay? Performs miracles, has an army of 70,000 Jews, 70,000 Turks, and is blind on one eye, and has a tattoo, they say, on his forehead that says infidel. So he is the Antichrist, and he looks like this. The Dajjal, this is from the Hadiths, is blind on one eye and will be crooked in the other eye. He will have a lot of hair and will be a great deceiver. Another Hadith says, the Dajjal, he'll have the word kafir or disbeliever written on his forehead, which will be visible to the believers. Okay. Also, he'll be a deceiver. The Sunnah says the Dajjal will have with him water and fire. What people will think is water will be fire. What they think will be fire will be water. So whoever is able to get the fire, let him do so. So in essence, he's a deceiver. Okay. So when the Dajjal comes, what he wants to do, the essence of what he does is when he comes to earth, is he deceives. And it'll be a great test for the Muslims. Okay, it'll be a great test for the Muslims to see whose faith are we on. Okay, whose side? What do we really believe? Okay, that's the Dajjal. So he is the Islamic Antichrist. The third. So we have the Mahdi. We have the Mahdi. Okay, we have the Dajjal, and third we have Isa. And you know who Isa is? Jesus. Okay. So in Islamic eschatology, Jesus plays a significant role, big role. In Islamic eschatology, or in Islamic theology, that is, Isa never dies. Remember, we talked about that last week. He was appeared to be crucified in Surah 4, ayat 157, 58, appeared to be crucified, and someone else was there instead of him. So it looked like he was crucified, but it was either Judas Iscariot or Simon of Cyrene or someone that was put on the cross and had his face. But we talked about Allah being a deceiver. I don't want to go too deep into that. But essentially, the reason why he took Isa up is because he's going to come back down. And when Isa comes back down, the very essence of what Isa will do is that he will assist the Mahdi in war. So it's going to look like the Mahdi is going to come, or Isa, Jesus is going to come back and be the Christian Jesus, and the opposite will be true. He will say to the Mahdi will be in fear. Like, oh, it's Isa, the great prophet. Wasa'alam, and then all of a sudden Isa will say no, and he'll point, and he'll support him, he'll pray behind him. Okay. Let me read to you what the hadith says about Jesus. By him in whose hand my soul is, surely Jesus, the Son of Mary, will soon descend among you and will judge mankind justly as a just ruler. He will break the cross, kill the swine, and abolish the jizya. Okay, when Muslims read that, when they say break the cross, it's not one literal cross. Say it's the cross on the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, or I don't know, I was gonna name a church in California, like Rick Warren's church. It's Christianity in general. He's gonna wipe out Christians, and he's gonna tell to Christians, you guys were wrong about me. Muslims were right. Follow them. Convert to Islam. La ilaha illallah. Right? That's the message. What's going to come about. Okay. So remember, but think of it theologically. If you have no death, because there's no resurrection. If you have no resurrection, you have no, obviously, sacrifice. If you have no sacrifice, you have no atonement. If you have no atonement, you have no peace with God. Okay. It's a scary spiritual state. I can't do it. I know I can't do it on my own. That's why I need Jesus, the Christian Jesus. Right? So follow that logical order. So this will bring about the battle of Gog and Magog, okay, which is in Ezekiel 38-39. This is where the war, and the Quran actually mentions Gog and Magog. Actually, let me read it to you guys. Surah 21, verse ayat 96 says, it is impossible for society which we have destroyed to ever rise again until after Gog and Magog has broken loose from the barrier, swarming down from every hill. Okay, so they believe in Gog and Magog, but this is when Christ returns. Remember, there's going to be a war. There's going to be a war, and they believe Gog and Magog is during the reign of Christ. Okay, so remember, they believe that the Mahdi, his reign will be 7 years. Okay, Jesus, what Jesus is going to do, he'll reign with the Mahdi, but after, he's going to get married, and when he gets married, he's going to have children, and he's going to die, and he'll be buried beside Muhammad in Medina. Yeah, to prove that he is not the Son of God. He will die. So it's kind of like, for us, like Elijah. Elijah never died. He was ascended to heaven. Well, Elijah will come back, and he's going to die because everyone has to die. Very similar logic. We have 3 major signs in Islamic eschatology. So we had minor signs, we have major signs. We had the arrival of the Mahdi, who is a messianic figure, right? He's going to Islamicize the world, to bring pretty much the new earth, but of Islam. And then there's the Dajjal. The Dajjal is the Antichrist. And then there's Isa, Jesus, who assists the Mahdi. So I'll stop there, but my question is, because I started off, not ended, because I was going to just read, but with reading Revelation chapter 13, right? In Revelation chapter 13, remember, Christian eschatological figures is that we believe in the return of Christ, we believe in a future Antichrist, and we believe in a false prophet who assists the Antichrist. Okay? But that's what we believe. But I just named 3 figures of Islamic eschatology. And my question is the hero of Christianity the villain of Islam? And is the hero of Islam the villain of Christianity? You see that? So in essence, remember we talked about the Mahdi. Is the Mahdi the Islamic savior? The Mahdi, is he just our Antichrist? Because we believe in Antichrist. So the beast in Revelation chapter 13, verse 1 to 10. Is it our Antichrist? We talked about the false prophet. And who is the false prophet? Well, it's the person that assists the Antichrist, they believe is Esau. So is the false prophet, is our false prophet their version of Jesus, Esau, right? And last is the Dajjal we talked about. The Dajjal is their version of the Antichrist, who is Jewish, but is that our view of the return of Christ? This is a lot, but it's good to think about as far as eschatology and what goes on. Okay, so what I'm saying is, and not only that, you add Jews who are looking for their Messiah too. Is there a pinnacle moment when it comes to the Abrahamic faith? Because I really believe, and it's kind of like the way we started this whole series, this short series, is that at the end of the day, what shapes the world, and this can be proven for the last 2,000 years, is the Abrahamic faith, and more specifically Christianity and Islam, because they're proselytizing faith. Judaism, there's only 14 million. They don't proselytize, meaning they don't go out and Shema, believe in the Shema, be like me. None of that. So it comes down to Christianity and Islam, and there's a moment that we're all waiting for. And what I'm suggesting is our Antichrist their Mahdi, their savior? Right? Because think of what he does. He causes war, or to them, it's for what he's fighting evil. That's what he's doing for 7 years, right? Well, he'll say he's peaceful, but all of a sudden break it, and all of a sudden there's going to be war and slaughter of Jews, etc. Right? And then all of a sudden you have someone that assists him, the false prophet, and then all of a sudden we believe in the return of Christ. Okay, so it's almost as if the Mahdi of Islam is our Antichrist. Okay?
Are these questions rhetorical, or do you want an answer?
You know what? And usually when people like MacArthur, they'll say it. Notice I never said this is true. I'm suggesting it. I'm throwing it out there for discussion and bringing all the facts and lying them together. Okay, so I know what's about to come is that, wait, if you're saying that the Antichrist of Christianity is Islamic, then what about Daniel chapter 2? What about Daniel chapter 7? Because remember, Daniel chapter 2 and 7, it's the succession of the kingdoms of Nebuchadnezzar's statue of Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece or Macedonian, and then Rome. But then wait, shouldn't it be Islam, right? So I'm just throwing that out.
I think the coming Gog-Magog war of Ezekiel 38, the first one, is going to destroy most of the nations of Islam coming against Israel.
Okay.
And so they won't be a factor. So I don't believe that the Jews would ever accept an Islamic Antichrist, because that's their Messiah. When the Antichrist comes, they believe he's the Messiah, and he signs a peace treaty with them. So they would never sign a peace treaty with the Muslim. So I think that it would, according to the Bible, I think it's like a revival of the Roman Empire. So I don't think it is. So yeah, I hear all what you're saying, and I've looked at that too. It looks similar, but for those reasons, I don't think that it will be that way.
All right, now throwing this out there, and I wasn't dogmatic for a reason. As far as I'm saying, this is what it is. I'm throwing it out there. That's the way I'm presenting it. But in this whole process, is it possible then for a revived Roman Empire to be Islamic? So MacArthur believes that. Our friend Earl, who I talked to today about this, so it's regional. So MacArthur believes if you look at Rome, you look at the East and you look at the West, the East is I'd say 60% of the Roman Empire is Islamic in the sense of the regions, right? So MacArthur will say, yes, it's Rome from Daniel 2 and 7, but the regions of it. So as a result, it's going to be Islamic. So that's a possible.
Yeah, I disagree. I understand what you're saying. I've heard the whole talk on it, but I disagree. Thanks.
So anyways, I'm throwing it out there, but it is